Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. As some of you might know, this winter I broke the ACL of my right knee while skiing. ACL stands for Anterior Cruciate Ligament. It is in both knees and a very common injury when practicing sports. This happened at the end of January, and at this point I'm already well into the recovery phase since I got my surgery done about 2 months ago. I personally live in Spain, and we have a public health care system which sometimes it is not the best we could have, especially when it comes to non-life-threatening situations like the case of my knee. I could go without having surgery in my knee for several months, but this doesn't mean that I wouldn't like to have it done ASAP. But luckily for me, I have a private health insurance plan, which means that I didn't have to pay anything extra to get my surgery done, and of course it speeded up the process a lot. The question though is, what happens if you do not have a private health insurance in Spain? Well, at that point you basically have two different options. Option one is that you wait for a potentially very long time, which can be more than 6 months very easily, to get the surgery done by the Spanish Social Security and fully paid for, so it would be for free, you wouldn't have to pay anything. In fact, the average waiting time for a surgery in Spain in 2020 was of 148 days, which is about 5 months. This is 148 days from the moment in which the doctor requests the surgery to be done. But of course, this is not the moment in which you break the ligaments, because before that you need to have visits with the doctor, do an MRI to see what's exactly going on with your knee and what's happening, and to see whether they really need to operate or not. So it can take pretty long from the moment that you break the ligaments until you finally get operated. Then option number two is to go to a private clinic and just completely pay for it. Taking this option, probably within 1 to 2 months from breaking the ligaments, you would for sure have already had the surgery. With this in mind, in today's video, I want to estimate the total cost of having an ACL surgery as a private patient and fully paying for it. Not just the cost of the surgery itself, but the total cost of breaking the ligaments, as besides the surgery, there are many other costs. In my case, for instance, we have first the cost of the medical attention that I received at the ski resort where I broke the ligaments, then of course the visits to the doctor, the MRI, X-rays, the surgery, and the physiotherapy sessions afterwards, not to mention the cost of driving to the hospital every single time I had a visit, then of course also paying for the parking. And in all of this, we need to consider that you cannot do it on your own because you broke the ligament, so you always need someone to drive with you to the hospital and so on, which in my case this was my mom, so thank you mom for that. Let's start first with the largest cost of all, and that is the surgery. In Spain, looking at most offers from what I could see online, the cost of the surgery is of about 4,200 euros. This generally includes the surgery, the visits prior and after the surgery with the doctor, and then the stay at the hospital, as well as all the pre-surgery tests that you need to do. On top of that though, let's include other costs to keep in mind. In my case, as I mentioned, I got medical attention at the ski resort, and this was 190 euros. Luckily for me, my private health insurance then paid for that, but of course if you don't have one, you need to pay that. Additionally, we need to add the knee orthosis that I had to buy to basically stabilize my knee, which costed 175 euros, although you can of course also get it cheaper depending on which model you buy. And then we should also add the crutches, which cost around 30 euros. Then we have the several visits to the doctor, which here I will assume that you don't pay anything extra for it and that all the visits come included within the price of the surgery itself. But if you had to pay for those visits, you can assume at least 50 euros for each visit. Then the MRI for the knee, the cost of it is of 400 euros. In my case, I didn't just have one, but I had two, because after 1.5 months they wanted to see how the ligament was progressing. It's not very common though. Finally, the physiotherapy sessions afterwards, the cost of these is probably at least 20 euros per session, and I'm going on the very low end, and you will have to do at least 50 if you follow the recommendations of the doctors. Of course, if you then have to pay money from your own pocket, you will probably reduce those sessions and maybe just do 20 instead of 50, but I'm just trying to place here what the current situation is if you were to go with a private health insurance like my case. If we add all the costs I just mentioned now, we get to an estimated total of almost 6,000 euros for breaking the ligaments. And for me though, it is not just about the money, but especially about all the things that I haven't been able to do while I was injured. And this is especially relevant if you are a very sportive and active person, because yeah, breaking the ACL is really not cool at all. Of course, it is good or relatively good that after 1 to 2 months from the operation, you can already walk normally and do most things, but the expected full recovery time is between 6 to 9 months. So 6 to 9 months until you can go back to doing everything you were doing before. Other huge downsides include all the time lost by going to the different doctor's appointments, doing the recover, the loss of muscular mass and the physical condition due to the inactivity, which can also derive into less self-esteem and maybe also putting on some weight. And then if you cannot work during a certain period of time, luckily in Spain you still get paid, usually not 100% of your salary, although in some companies or depending on the company, yes, but at least 60%. However, if you are self-employed, then this is really bad and much harder to deal with. Overall, the cost of breaking the ACL, regardless of whether you have a private health insurance or not, is extremely high in my eyes when adding all of the different factors I mentioned in this video. And even if you have a private health insurance, in my case I pay, well, I don't pay because my employer is paying for that, but I think that they are paying around 50 euros per month, which adds up to about 600 euros annually. And this means that you need about 10 years of paying for this private health insurance to pay for the whole operation or the surgery that I had. And in my eyes, after this experience, I definitely think that having a private health insurance provides a pretty good value for the money paid, at least in Spain, and especially if you are a person who loves practicing sports, because then you are more likely to get injured and make use of the services. With that, I will leave it for today. As I mentioned, the numbers I showed are just an estimation, which I believe to be a pretty good one based on my experience, but of course it will depend on each individual's situation, and of course especially whether you choose to have a surgery with, let's say, a more normal doctor or an average one, or if you want to go with the best of the best or the one that you have heard better reviews of, because then you can really pay much more than what I shared right now. Obviously, the best is to not break any ligament or anything from your body, but if you unfortunately have, like myself, then I hope that this video is useful and helps you go through the process or at least know the cost. If you enjoyed the video, then don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you're not yet subscribed, and as always, see you next time.